Hey, everybody, welcome and thanks for joining us on another episode of Project Perspectives. Today, we're going to do something a little interesting in the sense that I am going to be asking Sarah some questions about her work and what she does. So say hello, Sarah.
Hello.
So before you go, oh, gee, I don't want to listen to an interview, we're really going to be talking about aspects of paranormal work, how these can benefit you. So we hope that you'll stay with us and join us because it's not just about Sarah's work, but it's also about her really highlighting the way that she helps people and that may be beneficial for you. So I want to kind of get started here, getting into the meat of stuff. And, we both consider ourselves, would you consider yourself a paranormal investigator or just a paranormal worker?
I did put on the website Paranormal Investigator because we do some of that. And because that's kind of what a little bit. It's not the same as like ghost adventures.
Exactly. Well, and I think that that's really a good point to point out is that paranormal work can be very diverse. What we see on television, I think you and I both know, is a very sad tribute to the reality of what the work really involves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of your opinion on it?
It's
entertaining, but it's so wrong.
I have mixed emotions about it for sure, just because I don't know. Do you want to open that can of worms? But
well, no, not really. I mean, but I think it's important for people to realize that what they're seeing on television is really just not accurate.
Right.
Is there some, what positive comes out of it?
There are some good things that come out of it. I think some of the evidence that I've seen on their shows, I'm like, wow, I don't know, maybe that was an entity that just walked by, but it's all very dramatic and it's all very put on, and they're actually, a lot of them aren't even helping people. They're actually just stirring up more activity, and I don't know if they realize that. And then clients are left with a mess afterwards. Well, you got a bunch of evidence, but you still got ghosts.
Yeah. If there's even anything going on to begin with, right?
Right.
So it's really got an entertainment value. But so the reality of paranormal work is that people legitimately do call for assistance. And that was one of the things that because, like I said, I think you and I come at it very differently because our niches are a little bit different, but we're still serving people. That's ultimately the goal. People that are having what they consider paranormal experiences. Even if those are psychic experiences, they don't know where to start. So they will look for a paranormal, or I hate the word ghost hunting also, because we're not ghost hunting. We're investigating. We're looking for solutions and answers. So what's the typical client like for you in your work? By the time someone gets to you, I mean, are they looking for something special?
A lot of times the people that reach out to us have already exhausted a lot of their avenues. They've already contacted a lot of paranormal groups.
Right.
Yeah. And so by the time they get a hold of us, they're kind of at their wit's end, and what do I do? How do I fix it? There's a variety of clients though, because some people genuinely are looking for a removal or some kind of clearing. But some people just kind of want the validation also, where they're just, I feel like they're not really interested in getting rid of it, to be honest. They just want to know or get some kind of attention about the activity that's going on. And it happens a lot more than you think. But again, typically we're kind of like the last resort. People are like, I'm, at my wit's end. What do I do? How do I keep my space clear?
Gotcha. And that raises an interesting question. So why have these other paranormal groups failed them then? Because I think that that's a really important aspect that a lot of paranormal groups or paranormal investigators, if you're doing it independently, are failing people. So how have those other groups failed them as far as your clients are concerned?
Well, when a paranormal team comes into any highly active area and they start, going through their motions with, their recordings and the EVPs and the videos, they're almost invoking this activity because they're trying to get evidence and they're trying to figure out for the client, what's going on. And you can do that a lot with EVPs. And like I said, video evidence, as much evidence as you can get that this is indeed paranormal. That's not the problem. The problem comes when, after they've stirred up all of this activity, and then they don't have any real solutions for the client as to what to do afterwards. And so the client will have all this information and video evidence, but then they're still kind of stuck with a pissed off spirit. So we have to clean up messes a lot of times from other paranormal groups, which is sad, but it happens. And another thing is,
go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Another thing is just for clients, don't do paranormal investigation in your house, because that does draw activity, whether you want it or not. So yeah, because people are interested and they're like, oh, I want to do some EVPs, and you're literally bringing it into your space. And then like, oh, I have an entity now, I don't know what to do with it. Well, what have you been up to? What have you been doing? Oh, I was recording this and that, and asking if my uncle is here, whatever. I'm like, just don't, just don't.
And the other thing with that too is there may not really be legitimate a spirit present. They could be creating their own fear. They could be utilizing what's called, living agent PK, right? I mean, where they're the one that's infected, that they're affecting the environment by their desire to have an experience. And so they could actually be generating the experience themselves. I actually have a blog post about whether or not people want to do EVPs at home and some of the dangers of some of that. And not dangers. I don't like that word, because I think you can do it. I mean, I do readings at home. So does that mean that I'm welcoming activity? The answer to that is no, right?
That's different. Yeah, no, that's different.
But it's the intention that's making it different, and it's the process, right? So yeah. I think how you do it and it is relevant to that, because
Well, the same, I think, concept applies to Ouija boards. There's a lot of controversy on whether or not Ouija boards are totally evil or just a tool, or
if they're even valid, right? I mean,
right. And I kind of think that it's like, well, if you don't know what you're doing with it, you could turn it into something potentially dangerous. Bottom line,
right?
Because I mean, I don't know. It's just it's all about intention. When you're just kind of reaching out for anything, then anything can show up.
So ultimately, by the time people have gotten to you, they've kind of been left in the lurch, because you're right. A lot of ghost hunting, again, hate that word, but paranormal work is about coming in and saying, can we find any tangible, measurable environmental factors? Can we explain away any plausible explanations, right? Because oftentimes there's very plausible explanations for experiences that may have nothing to do with spirits whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, there are people that are having these experiences, whether they're self-generated or generated by a spirit, and they want resolution. Right. Now, when you talked about the validation that they're looking for, so are people not feeling validated by the so-called evidence? What other additional validation are they wanting from you then? Or are they wanting belief? And forgive me here, but I'm going to drill down on some of this. If they just want somebody to believe what they're believing, that might not always be in their best service.
Right. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure on everyone's motivations for all of it. For validation, sometimes I feel like it's just the idea that they're not going crazy.
I was going to say that. Yeah. People want to know they're not crazy, that they're having the experience, regardless of what the cause is, right? It's like, okay, she believes me, right?
Yeah, and she's credible, and she saw exactly what I saw. So, because there have been times where I have described an entity, and then the client will say, that is exactly what my daughter described, and I was like, oh, okay then. So,
that gives people a sense of comfort, right? Because then all of a sudden someone else is validating that experience. Again, we're not talking about what the experience is. You're just validating that they had it.
Well, also that your child had it. you know,
Right.
so because a lot of people are like, well, you're just making up stories, kid, you know.
Right. But that's
And so
validation. Sure.
so when I say I saw this and her daughter said the same thing,
Hmm.
then that gives her daughter credibility and the mom to be able to believe that
Hmm.
she's also not crazy.
Right.
So some of it is harmless as far as you know, just they want the validation so they know
Mhm.
that um they're not crazy and it's
Yeah.
actually happening. But some of it is kind of more, I think, self-serving. They just kind of
Self-serving
want,
and, okay, I was gonna say, in what
well,
way?
because their attention, and they just want the attention.
Mhm.
Um,
And are you able to feel into
they're
that then when in
Yeah,
those particular
because what
cases?
happens is you'll go and you'll fix it, and then they'll be like, "Oh, it's still there," and oh, it's very drama queen-esque.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so they're just kind of, it's like they don't want the activity to go away because it's something for them to almost complain about. Some people are just like that, where they have a problem, they want to complain about it, they're not solution oriented whatsoever, and so they keep perpetuating the problem.
Right, right. Yes. Yeah. And those are difficult, right? I mean,
Yeah,
those are definitely difficult. It's like they have a
right,
love-hate relationship with whatever their experiences are.
right.
Um, so can you give me some examples of situations where people reached out and what they wanted for you? I mean, like a range of just obviously we can't betray people's confidentiality, but you can kind of give me some generalities of what's the typical client looking for? Like you said, clearing, resolution. They want whatever the experience is to stop, or they want the attention, right?
Usually it's answers. Usually it's answers and removal. That's usually what we do. We
Okay.
tell people, you know, this is what we saw, this is what we think is going on,
Mhm.
and this is what we did about it, and then this is how you can keep yourself clear. And then we kind of cross our fingers and hope that the client listens and applies what we've said. And then the validation is usually in the lack of activity,
Right.
or you know, the energy is just better, they feel better, however that looks. So like a typical client will be like this: my cupboards are opening and you know there's cups flying off the kitchen and I can't deal with this kind of activity anymore. What the heck is going on? Wow, okay, well, let's find out, you know. So we show up, we assess the situation. Sometimes, like I said, it deals with removal. Sometimes it's, you know, like there's combat involved. But other times there's nothing. And so it's like, well, we don't really know what's happening because we haven't seen anything yet. Maybe it looks like it's a little dark, you know, you got a black cloud hanging over your head, but we didn't find anything to do necessarily or to remove necessarily.
Well, it wouldn't in that case, it would just be a case of, again, what we would call, living agent PK, where someone in the home is responsible for that type of activity, because that is
Right.
just as possible as a spirit being responsible for those. Does that feel different for you when you
Yeah.
run into
So
those
there's,
cases where it's the living versus the spirit?
right. So there are what we call thought forms. Thought forms is what you're talking about, PK. They've basically created this thing, right? It's not an actual entity. Um, People can do that with just their own energy, like you're saying, but there are times when it's not like that and the entity is hiding or it's not there at the moment and it knows we're coming. And there's so much that goes on. Like I've had to make sneak attacks before just to get something because it knew I was going to be there. It can get really tricky and weird. Just saying. So, you know, we kind of go through the questionnaire, you know, to make sure that, you know, we have like an assessment process where it's like, you know,
Right.
we kind of have an idea already before we get in there what we're up against
Mhm.
and what the plan is. Like I don't go in without a plan. I have a
Right.
plan.
Well, I know this is
Um,
something that you've been doing for how many years now? I mean, where you've developed a process and you've got, you and your team, you have a variety of ways of handling this. It's not just random. Yeah.
Right. Going on 3 years now doing Astral. Yeah.
I love what you do. And I want people to know that I've actually reached out to you on an occasion where I had an incident and I needed some assistance as well. So I am not poo-pooing Sarah's work in any way, shape, or form. But what she does is really what I'm going to call esoteric. It's a little bit out there, right? Because you're using the words of connecting with spirits, and you use the word entity. And every time you use the word entity, it's like I want to roll my eyes, right? And there's probably listeners who are going, why is she calling it an entity? And so,
well, because it could be
it's
a variety
like, why
of
use
things.
that word? It's such a heavy word. I mean, and doesn't that immediately paint this picture of, if you're saying there's an entity there, that it's dark and it's negative? And I mean, why is it always dark and negative? Or is that just where your work falls?
I think that's because of the nature of the work. Okay. And that's probably the only reason why we come across all this dark stuff all the time, is because we're looking for it. We're helping people that are being affected by it. And so therefore we're being thrown into it.
So you're targeting that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the word entity, I mean, do you always use that because it has a negative connotation? Because when we think of a positive spirit, we say spirit, we don't say entity.
I say entity because sometimes I don't even know what it is.
I gotcha. Okay. Got it.
Sometimes I do. And that comes with experience. So, we do taste tests. Sounds weird, but it's like to test the energy, it's like, this has a little bit of a trickster feel. We've come across that before.
I see.
Or, this is strictly just people that need to be crossed over. This is going to be a pretty simple case. It's not going to be any kind of combat going on. More of like a counseling session with somebody to cross them over. And sometimes it is demonic, straight up, we've had to remove,
which gets another one of my
I know.
And I know this, and it's like, okay, because and especially my parapsychology professor, he's like, if I ever hear any of my paranormal investigators use the word demonic, you're not gonna you're not going to be involved with me again. But let's face it, there's negative people on the planet, right? There's people who do bad things in the real world.
Right.
So isn't that also possible then, that there are spirits who are less than positive?
Oh yeah.
It's like, why is it that bad people can exist, but bad spirits can't exist?
Right. So the difference,
I agree with that, but it's
right. Yeah. But the difference is in the feel. So you can come across somebody, meaning human, that is just kind of a bad person, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But they're trying to put on this persona of scary demon, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, because of what we can see right through that, we're like, you're not a scary demon, you're an idiot, and you're just trying to scare us. So then that becomes super simple. But when it is actually a demon, it's the power level is totally different. You're dealing with something that's not, it's not human. It's ancient.
So in your perspective, then you basically are saying you believe in demons because you've had experience with it.
I do. And I have to, because I believe in angels. So if you believe in angels, you kind of have to believe in demons as well, right? I mean, but this is the thing, is that not everything is, it's not black or white. It's not one or the other. So there are varieties of all of it and levels.
Fair enough. And I truly can't have too much of an opinion about it, because I haven't had that experience. It's like saying, well, I haven't had cancer, so I don't believe in it, right? That's just kind of silly. Just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean that it's real. But I think too, we have to be really careful, because we also know that sometimes paranormal groups go in and they spread fear by making false assumptions, right?
Right.
Or running right in and going, oh, this is a negative entity or a demon, or because those are trigger words for people that are already frightened and afraid.
Right.
So how do you avoid, or how do you deal with those cases when you're running into something that's super, super negative and you're aware of it? but I know you, and I know that your work is very ethical and important to you. How do you protect the client when something like that is going on? How do you handle
Yeah.
that?
So we gauge the client as far as, I guess, their fear level and also their psychic level. What can they handle? So, like, for example, if the client is already explaining to me that they've seen this really scary, demonic like type thing, I'm not going to have that big of a problem describing it back to her or them if that's what I saw, right?
Because they're
Now,
already aware of it at
because they're
some level.
already aware of it. So now if I'm dealing with someone that's super scared and they have no idea, and I know that if I sit there and say, oh, I just removed a demon from your house, they are going to a brick, right? I won't say that. I'll just say we found, the said entity, and that's probably why I say entity. We found the entity, it's been removed, you're good to go. Do your saging, do your grounding, and let me know if anything happens. That's it. So I kind of sugarcoat it for some people, and then some people I just lay it on thick.
So do most of the people that you do that work with, do you, I mean, and obviously nothing is a guarantee, but do you get a great deal of resolution? Do you get a great deal of people coming back to you and saying, hey, this worked and I feel so much better, giving you that feedback that things have shifted?
Yeah, feedback is super important and super great. So a lot of times what people will say is that there is just this overall lack of activity or, that things feel better. But there are times, and I think it really depends on like where the client lives, because sometimes there are things that we can't fix. Like a vortex, for example, is a naturally occurring thing in the planet that you cannot just change, right? But you can change the vibration of it, but you can't get rid of it. So if somebody lives in this kind of area where it's just really super high activity, you can teach someone how to keep their main space clear, but there's still going to be this like huge potential for more activity later on. So, I mean, that's
It depends.
partly,
It depends on the situation, obviously, right?
right. So after removal, we usually check in with the client and say, how are you feeling? Has anything else happened? Whatever. And some people will say, I slept like a baby. Everything feels much lighter. And then we just kind of go from there. It takes time to see the results.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it'll work for maybe 3 or 4 days, and then something happens and the client will call back and they'll be like, they came back or something happened and you have to come back, please help again. There was a particular case where 3 of us, for example, were on this case, and it took multiple times going back to continue to remove and cleanse this place because of the nature of it. It was kind of like a cursed native land, and there was just all kinds of stuff going on. And the more of that there is, the harder it is to fully eradicate everything. So it's not a foolproof thing, I guess. I mean, we can help and we can alleviate and we can remove stuff. But that's why we put the power back into the client's hands by giving them the tools and saying, this is what you can do to protect yourself. And hopefully then we don't have to come back at all. That's the goal.
And don't you find, though, that you do run into cases where there's individuals who are claiming activity, but there really isn't any? It's just their fear. It's just, or they're generating, I don't want to call it a spirit or entity or anything else, but whatever's happening is a result of them, right?
Right. That's kind of the attention people that I'm talking about. So there have been times where we've had hysterical people and we're like, okay, calm down. We're going to come in, we're going to take a look. We're going to see, what we can find. And if we can remove it, we get there and crickets. Interesting. So we try not to discredit the client right away. We'll just say, well, we showed up. We didn't see anything in particular that needed removal. Maybe we'll throw out some good vibes and raise the energy that way. And that is a protective measure anyways. So when you raise the vibrations, if something were to try to come back, it probably won't want to anymore. But it's like, if we don't see anything, we're not going to tell anybody that we saw something, and we're not going to say that we removed it. And we're gonna be like, well, we didn't find anything. So,
right.
Better luck next time kind of thing. And so if we continuously go back and we're like, look, lady, you don't have anything at your house. I don't know, then we just start to, try to
no, it can be difficult if people are convinced or not to, and it's rare. Basically, if people are contacting you or I or anybody else, there clearly something is going on that's bothering them. It may have very normal explanations in environmental factors, psychological factors, or it could be psychic based. It really just depends.
I think the hardest ones to deal with are the ones where it's kind of a combination of, maybe there is some kind of like mental issues going on. Maybe they're taking some medications. Maybe they do have some activity, but it's like being exacerbated by whatever.
Yeah, it can be difficult to sort some of those things out.
Yeah. So it can be a sticky situation, but we do try to really vet our clients. And, like I said, we always go in with a plan and like a pre-sense of what already is happening at this place. And then we ask the clients for the validation, okay, are you experiencing this, this, and this? Yes. Perfect. Then we know that we're on the right track, and we make the plan, we go in, we remove it. And then after that, we call it client care, aftercare. It's like,
that's super important. That's right. That's super important, which is where some of the normal paranormal groups have failed, right? It's not about client care, client resolution. Yeah.
Right. So we just kind of, give them tips and tricks on how to, again, keep themselves grounded, keep their own space clear, and reduce the fear level, because and I tell people constantly, it's like, if you're scared, you're going to make it worse. And that is why I censor a lot of my information, because I don't want to say, oh, you have a big scary demon in your house. You should probably do something about that. It doesn't bode well. So,
and, I don't even want to scare people that are listening, because I think it's really important to reiterate again what Sarah said, is that this is very specialized work, right? By the time someone gets to you, they've been digging and digging and digging for a solution, and it's not common, right? So, it's common for you because it's the kind of work you do, but that doesn't mean that it's common in the general population. So many people are afraid, and that's, I'm like, oh, well, this is why you don't do it, because you can get yourself in trouble. And things can happen, but you can get yourself in trouble just going to the grocery store, right? You can pass some guy that you accidentally bump, and he's in a bad mood and he punches you in the face. There's just things sometimes that you can't control, right?
Yeah.
But that experience is not normal. It's not typical. It doesn't generally happen. So I just wanted to reiterate to people that we're not trying to spread fear or be fearful. It's just that because your work is so niche and so specialized, and that's why I love your title, Astral Maids, is because you guys come in and clean up.
Yeah.
But those cases are very small in comparison to all of the experiences and paranormal type or psychic related work that's out there, because a majority of it is positive, right?
Yeah, actually, majority of it, well, it ends up positive, maybe. For
the cases that you're doing, but it's like, there's plenty of positive spirits that visit families as well, right? Or there's plenty of positive psychic experiences that people are having that don't go to the negative place.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. So one of the things that's interesting when you say you go in there, but you guys don't actually visit people's locations physically. Like, you don't get in your car and drive to someone's home, correct?
Right. No. Yes. Right. No.
Okay. which is really interesting because people think, okay, I'm going to call a paranormal group and they're going to come visit my home. So, which sometimes is necessary in order to rule out plausible explanations, right? It's like, oh, I keep hearing things in my attic, and the next thing you know, it's just a cat, right?
Right.
So, but again, you're telling me that the reason you don't do that is because by the time they've gotten to you, they've already ruled out all of those other things?
Usually, yes.
Because if you're not visiting the site, I guess the question is how do you rule out plausible explanations? Or I don't want people thinking you leap right away to it's always spirit based, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Right. We typically don't. I mean, we try to believe the client as much as possible, but we will ask, questions like, are you taking medication, or did you check the pipes? Did you look in the basement? Did you check the attic? Have you searched for rats, bats, and other things like that could be causing certain things. But usually the client will explain why it's unexplainable. And, usually we kind of get the feels already right away. So we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can tell there's definitely something going on, even if they themselves don't fully know. We still kind of have like, an idea if if it's something that can easily be explained or something that actually needs removal, because I don't want to have to get into astral and go there for nothing. It's, it's not like it's super hard, but it's still a waste of my time. So, we do try to vet people and ask pertinent questions about, are you sure this is actually paranormal activity? Yes. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, we have gone to places in the physical, and I will, if they're local. I mean, I don't have any problem going to, a site, boots on ground, but we don't typically do it because we don't have to. So if I don't have to, I don't go.
Right. I got you. Yeah. Well, I thought it was just something important to bring up because people sometimes think, okay, well, I'm going to contact somebody for some paranormal work and they're going to come to my home. And, it's called like a site visit, right? A site visit isn't always warranted or necessary. It really depends on the situation. And that's true even for what, I'm like you. If someone contacts me and tells me they're having experiences, it's going to depend on what your experiences are as to whether or not I feel that it's something that it's necessary for me to go down and view. If you're having movement in the home, objects are moving and things like that, that might be something that is worth going down and getting some environmental, getting some visual and some of that kind of stuff. But it's not always necessary to do a site visit. It just depends. But I just wanted to point out to people that by the time they get to you, site visit is not, or you call it boots on ground, is not really something that's there. So, of course, people then ask, well, then how do you work from home? How are you doing all of this from home? And of course, I know what my answer is, but so how do you do all this from home?
Right. Well, I mean, it's remote, everything's done remotely. So,
I mean, a reading is remote, right? If I'm connecting with your departed loved one, I do it over the phone, do it over Zoom. You don't have to be present. That's the point of psychic abilities, is that they're beyond space and time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the beauty of astral travel. I mean, although I will say you don't have to astral in order to clear a space.
No, yeah. So let's go there. I'm going to back up because you've used astral a couple of times, and it's like, I know what astral means to you. It wouldn't be a term that I would use because astral to me means something different. So, but it's okay. It's just terminology. So when you refer to astral, what are you talking about? What does it feel like? What are you doing? Are you completely conscious? Are you laying down on a sofa and you truly go out of body? Give me your explanation of what it's like for you.
Okay. So first, I just wanted to say, you don't have to astral, because when I was, basically just a medium, and, I think when you and I did that house cleansing for that one gal, that wasn't done in astral. That was done by asking spirit to remove spirit. Mm-hmm. So when we were doing that cleansing process, none of us were in astral. We asked literally our guides, angels, and the client's guides, angels, etc., to get together and boot out anything that needed to be booted out by setting the intention, lighting the candles and doing it. Then that lady was like, wow, ta-da. So it does not require astral. However, because astral and the nature of it, I can go to different places. I can assess the situation. I can see things that I wouldn't have seen even just with getting the psychic information.
But I'm going to say, so how is that different then from just perceiving at a psychic level, right? So what's the difference for you?
So for example, when we get a case, we do what's called, or what me and Megan call half and halving. Okay. And that is remote viewing, basically. Okay. So we're conscious when we do it. We get little bits of information about what's going on, but it's still not the full picture until you go into full astral. And full astral is basically, I'd be laying down in a meditative state. I'm still conscious though, right? So I'm still aware, but I'm in an altered state. And then the third way is lucid dreaming, which I don't do any kind of work in lucid dreaming consciously. I've heard some people say that they would do cases like that. That I don't have that experience. Okay. That's not for me. So the main ways that I do it is basically, like I said, I just kind of break it down to, even though some people will say remote viewing and astral is the same thing, to me, they're slightly different, because remote viewing is what I do in order to get the plan and to get, the assessment of what all is happening. And, like a little bit of you got to know what you're getting into before you get there. And then astral is when, we actually go in there to kick some butt and take names and clear the space.
So when you go into astral, you are generally in a meditative state. Your eyes are closed, and so are you willing some part of you to leave your body, or are you literally leaving your body, or are you just perceiving beyond the body? Is it a departure, or is it a perception? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
because I've had the true definition of an out-of-body experience is when your awareness leaves the body and you can perceive your body from outside.
OBE is totally different, if you ask me. Because an OBE happens to people a lot of times when they're sick and they have health problems and they are literally coming out of their body, and it's there's lots
of reasons for OBE. They're, or sometimes, by location, that kind of thing. Some people can consciously do it. For example, if you look on YouTube, Alex Tannis was a very famous person for being able to control out-of-body experiences. He could literally lay down, put himself into an altered state. He could perceive his body laying down on the couch, and his consciousness would leave and go into another room, and then he would complete experiments.
Right. And but there's still levels of that. Okay. So there's still levels of that.
That's fair.
So like the longer that I'm in astral, like the more clear it can become, or the more palatable, or something like that, where you are
leave your body though.
You do though. Yes. Spiritually, yes, you're leaving. You're not here. You're totally not. You're conscious and aware in some other place. I'm fighting battles, or, clearing spaces, whatever it is. It's totally a different feeling than just the remote viewing. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's more of like, I think I understand what you're saying in the sense of each one of those is a layer, right? Each one of those is a depth where you're perceiving, but the perception changes based on how deeply you go into that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
With the full out of body being the ultimate of consciousness leaving and perceiving itself, like
right. Like I can do that. I can, how to explain that. Yeah, I can do that. I can look at myself, my body.
Mhm.
But how clear is it will depend on the level of astral in which I am in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. No, and I'm think I'm understanding that because I think of it in terms of channeling. People say, well, what is channeling? Channeling is just mediumship, right? It's the same
Right.
thing. But mediumship is a shallower level of connection. So it's really the depth of connection. When you're channeling, you're going really deep. You're getting a pure conversation, a pure connection, and you're just letting information flow through. So it's a
Right.
level, it's a depth. You're right. It's
Yep.
not a, well, it's either this or that. So it's a degree. That's okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you're in this astral space, then why is that more beneficial than just working from that, let's say, that remote viewing, that clairvoyant perspective? What is enhanced about astral as opposed to just working at this shallower level?
I guess it's just because, like you said, it's a deeper level.
Are you more, do you
I
have more, are you more perceptive? Do you have more capabilities at that level?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Okay.
we have lots of capabilities. I mean, it's when you're in astral, I mean, there's not, I don't know, I don't know what the limits are. I don't know what the limits are. There's so much that we can do. We can heal people. We can,
But we can heal people even consciously. I could sit here right now and set the intention,
I guess
right?
the
I don't have
difference
to go
is
to
that I
astral
can
to do
see
that.
what exactly is wrong. So I could be like, oh, I can tell that your throat chakra is blocked, or I can tell that, your body looks black and gross because you're holding on to too much negative energy. Or so I mean, it's just an easier diagnosis almost of what exactly is going on,
Okay.
on many levels. You can see, you can even travel in time, okay, in astral, and you can see past events. You might not be seeing them entirely accurate because it might be like a parallel thing. I don't know how to
But
explain
isn't
that
that
either.
just, I mean, that's just retrocognition. That's just remote viewing again and backwards in time, right? So how
Yeah,
is,
but again, remote viewing and astral are still similar. It's still, again, we're talking
okay,
about levels.
gotcha.
So
Okay. Well, I
I
don't want to
guess,
get hung up on it, but I know it's one of those kind of, sometimes people consider it a woo-woo term. And I kind of, I think if we discuss it a little bit, we can kind of make it more benign, right? And make it so people realize you can call it whatever you want, but here's what's happening, right?
right.
I mean, it's a depth of connection. So do you consider the astral realm the same thing as astral travel? Because that gets really confusing, right? It's,
The astral realm as astral travel.
yeah, because you hear some people say there's an astral realm, like we're in the physical realm, and then there's the astral realm. And it's, how does that apply? Because I've heard that term.
Okay, so the astral realm is a place like Middle Earth or Midgard, or however you want to explain that. It's this first layer of spiritual earth. Okay. And it's almost like the first place that you would go to if you die, when you die. It's like the first level of spirit, as above, so below kind of thing. It's the first dimension,
Okay.
if you will. And in that dimension, there's everything. I mean, I don't know how to explain everything.
So when you go
People,
astral,
there's different kinds of entities. There's, I mean, things can come and go. Astral is like, the astral realm is like Earth, but a reflection of Earth.
right. Okay.
If that makes sense.
And so when you go astral, are you only in that realm?
Well, that depends on what we're doing. So from the astral realm, you can go to different realms, and there are different realms and dimensions. I mean, like I said, I don't even know what all the limits are, but
But is that astral realm typically where you work, or does it really
yes,
just depend on what you're encountering and what you're dealing with?
typically that's where we are, is in the astral realm. It's like this first layer
Okay.
of dimension, if you will.
Okay. Got it. All right. Well, thanks for explaining that, because I know it's
Yeah,
like what does astral mean,
I
right?
know, right? It is different than astral travel. So when you're saying astral travel, that's like, astral is the mode, travel is what you're doing. Astral realm is a place you could travel to.
Right. And that's why I brought it up, because it can be confusing because we're using the same term, but it really can describe a lot of different things. And so that's why I thought, well, let's talk about that word, because words can be confusing.
Right.
So let's talk about the fact that when you deal with your work, I remember, because, again, I'm skeptical, you would talk about some of the things that you would encounter. And I'm like, what on earth is she talking about?
I know.
And I don't want to get too much into what they all are, but, I know you've talked about elementals, and you use the word about negative spirits or beings, or even just creatures that we wouldn't normally think of on Earth. So how did this impact you when you started doing this work? I mean, were you open to all of those things beforehand? Were you skeptical? Has this opened your eyes? Has it supported your belief system?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I was a little more on the skeptical side when it comes to things like fairies and dragons and mermaids and, fantastical stuff like that people talk about. Even, demonic entities, aliens, so all of that stuff I have, well, except mermaids, all of that stuff I have come across in Astral, and not with any kind of intention. It was just, it happens. And when it happens, we start to ask questions, and we try to figure out, really what is it that we're looking at here or dealing with. And it's just really surprising. And so we kind of have to take what we're getting and have faith with it. And what's interesting is that a lot of times things like, we'll get cases that run in themes. So for a while there, it was like we were dealing a lot with fairies, felines, and which they are basically just elementals. But it's so weird because you can't say that's a human spirit. It's not. You get like feel from it. So, you
are they earthy, symbolic and archetypal, or do you think that they're literal, right? I mean, or are they thought forms, or
no, they're literal. They are things
to you. So you think they're literal. Okay.
They are literal, and they're not human. And they're earthbound. Oh, they're earth creatures. They're earthy. They are of the earth. They help control the earth. They help do, it's like Tinkerbell. I mean, you might as well just be like, Tinkerbell is for real. Because what I noticed was that they have tones that they communicate with, and I could hear the tone, but I couldn't understand what they were trying to say. And so you kind of have to go off of, it's not even telepathy. It's like a feeling at first. And then once you can start to like establish the connection, you can kind of get, more information, but it's really hard. And, they kind of just look like lights at first, but then it's like, once I started to get into it, only really one time I've seen one in like almost a human form, which is weird to me, but I guess they can do whatever they want. I don't know.
How did that impact you when you ran into these, experiences? I mean, did it scare you? Did you not believe it? I mean, I know you said you have a sense of being open, but.
Well, it's weird because
I would have completely doubted myself and thought I was crazy if I'd have said that. I went, that's just not real, or it's symbolic. It means something, but it's not literal. So how did that impact you? It can't be
symbolic when you're interacting with it. That's the difference, is like,
if it's a thought form, it could be.
Yeah, but whose thought form?
Whoever's having the experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we know what thought forms look like, so it's not a thought form.
Okay.
And thought forms don't glow pink and blue and chime little chimes and stuff like that. It's certain things that with the information that we get, we have to deduce as to what exactly it is that we're dealing with. And yes, it's a conglomeration and That's not the word I'm looking for. It's collaboration is what it is, from our guides and the information that we're getting, and we don't always work alone. So it's nice to have, a partner that can see also what you're seeing and kind of validates what you're getting,
Okay.
which is why I like to work, with people too. So when you get validation like that, though, it's kind of hard to dismiss anymore. And then when they keep coming up and you keep getting the same thing, you can't really dismiss it. You just kind of have to take it for what it is. Okay, well, I guess fairies are real.
So you learn to roll with it then, basically, right?
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. Okay.
I know it's weird.
Well, it is difficult. And you and I have those discussions. It is difficult for me. It's not a part of my experience, but I mean, you're certainly not someone that has made things up. You're not someone to exaggerate. You tell me these are your experiences, and if you have people that are seeing it and validating it and getting resolution, that is your evidence,
Yeah. And that's
it's crazy work, right? It's crazy work. So and I think it's important to discuss, because if someone is having that experience, don't come to me because I have no experience with it, but you do. And so you may be that person that can be a resource for someone who's having those types of experiences. Because let's face it, there's so much out there that we just don't know and understand.
Right. Yeah. Aliens are the same way. I don't like aliens because that is one thing I had to get over as far as fear is concerned. I was like, give me dead people all day long. That's fine. But when it comes to aliens,
that kind of pushes my buttons a little too. So
yeah, but that was another thing that I had to be like, okay, I guess this is what we're dealing with now is aliens. So there's not a lot we can do as far as they are concerned. I'll tell you that.
Well, and it's really interesting, and I'm not saying how I feel about it one way or another, but there's a great movie called Acknowledged that's out. I believe it's on Netflix or Amazon, one of the two. And this gentleman has developed an entire protocol for us to telepathically connect with living beings from other planets, because psychic abilities are beyond space and time, right? We just know that, right? And so if psychic abilities work beyond space and time, then we can connect with other beings from other planets. And apparently this is something that's possible. So the show Acknowledged talks about that. He actually has a protocol. I think it's called CE4 protocol. Mm-hmm. You can Google that. So I get where you're going. It was an interesting show when I watched it, but there's a part of me that went, boy, that's a little out there.
Yeah, I know.
He's very grounded and he brings a lot of science into it. So it's a great show to actually to kind of review over that. So anyway, I was just curious how running into these elementals and other aspects that are non-human, because let's face it, it's, people roll their eyes at that kind of stuff. I roll my eyes at that.
I roll my own eyes. Yeah, I know. It's hard, but honestly,
if it happens to me, I'm going to be like, okay, whatever.
I know. So Astral has taught me anything, it's to, really have faith in what the information is that you're getting, because it's so much different. You have to take it on the fly and you have to react. You don't have time to doubt what you're getting. You just have to go. It's totally different than doing a reading, getting information, and then, deciphering it and handing it back to somebody. It's more of an interaction.
It's interactive. I was just going to use that word. It's very interactive. Well, and that's really interesting. And that brings me to another topic that I wanted to talk about. Is, to me, it's really interesting. And I want to go backtrack and share a little bit of a story here. I had recently had a client contact me, and she was potentially interested in getting with me about doing some readings and some of that kind of stuff. She wanted some sessions. So she emailed back and forth and we were really going at it. And I thought, boy, I've never had anybody email me like this, just constantly. And then she wanted me to call her before she had the session and so on and so forth. So I ended up calling her. Things were just weird, right? Things were just really off. But I thought, sometimes people are just going through a difficult time. I try not to read people psychically, because that's, to me, is a privacy issue. I don't connect with someone at a psychic level until I'm actually in a session with them.
Right.
So anyway, we hung up and I thought, okay, I don't know if she's going to get a hold of me or not. So put her off to the side. So I have a scheduled reading with another person. I immediately start to open up and I start getting ready to do my work. And lo and behold, this other woman that had contacted me that I had talked to probably a week prior was right smack in the middle of my head. So I immediately knew what this was because it had happened to me once before. And I said, this woman has attached to me. She has done something, and I am psychically, I don't want to call it an attack because I don't like that word. I'm going to use the word intrusion, right? And we're going to be talking about that when we do our psychic self-defense, course that we are working on. But she was there, and it was very difficult for me to do my sitting. I had to work to clear that out. So I did my session. It went very well. I was very happy with it, but it was very difficult for me to purge that. I immediately got on the phone to you and I said, you're not going to believe this. This woman is attached to me. Now, I didn't know if it was intentional or not, and we discussed that quite a bit.
Right.
So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I think it's an important topic to discuss, is that people who do psychic work, we can become vulnerable. And I don't want to get into it because we know that this is a very big discussion that we're going to be discussing in some of our future episodes is the various ways that people can attach. But anyway, I needed help because I knew she was there. So I turned to you and I said, okay, can you go? Can you check? So on and so forth. And what's really interesting from a scientific perspective, because you use the word interactive, you really are using a form of what's called PK, right? You are using your intention to affect energy. All right. And so that's what healing is. If you're healing someone, you're using your intention to affect energy. If you are clearing, you are using your intention to affect energy. If you are scanning, you are using your energy to check energy. And so it is an interactive. So in terms of parapsychology, we have the remote viewing and the clairvoyant side, which is perceiving. You're getting information, you're aware, you're perceiving. But then you bring in the second component of that, which I never do because it's not my specialty, which is what we call mind-matter interactions, right? Or PK. This is the expressive side of psi, where people are healing, doing positive things. That's what you're doing. So I love the fact that actually science can explain what you're doing. You're using your astral remote viewing clairvoyance over here to observe, to become aware, to gain information, right? Informational psi. Then you're moving over to expressive psi, PK, psychokinesis, mind matter interactions, to affect an environment. And that's what I asked you to do because I have zero PK skills. I probably could, but I just don't have any interest in it. I could care less. I'm very much informational side. I'm over here on the other side of the house. So I asked you, go look, go see. So you would be using your informational side, right? You were perceiving. But then I said, can you fix it?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to fix it myself, right? I mean, I did to some degree, but I didn't have your specialty at it. That's when the PK kicks in. That's when your mind matter interaction, or in this case, mind spirit, mind energy, you are affecting my environment. So anyway, I'm doing more of the talking here, but I just wanted to highlight to people that you're doing two different types of work. You're getting involved. You're interacting with the energy through your intention, correct?
Correct.
So absolutely. That is the same thing as people who do energetic healing or set an intention to bring peace to a space, or, there's all kinds of studies already being done that shows that healing at a distance is a real thing. Touch therapy has been developed. We know that these things work. That's what you're doing. I think that's amazing.
I guess.
So had you ever looked at it as the fact that you're doing the informational side over here, and then when you're going in, it's very interactive, and it really, because the other day on a show you said, I wish I could do telekinesis, and I went, which is the movement of objects, but psychokinesis is just affecting things with the mind. They fall in the same category, but I guess had you ever really looked at it that way?
No, actually not really.
Well, I hope you do now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because in my example, in my example, just real briefly, what did you do besides perceiving the situation after that? And you don't have to get into details, but what was the intention that you put out there to help solve my situation with that lady that had kind of attached to me?
Well, the intention was removal.
You cleared my space, right?
And protection, because
cleared that energy from.
You were being invaded by a vampire that wanted to tap into your third eye. So, and it was also in your solar plexus. So, what's important for, I guess, people to be aware of is that some people are also able to use. And maybe it's sort of like this kind of ability where they're using their intentions for negativity.
They're using psychokinesis. They're using mind map. Yep, they're using their PK expressive psi for negative intentions.
Right. And in this case, it was to basically harvest your abilities, which is a thing, unfortunately.
But that was the reason. So what you did, though, how you resolved it was basically.
So what I did was I came to you energetically, and I looked at your chakras, and I saw a string on top of your head and something else that was poked into your solar plexus. And those were the things that I removed, ta-da, and sent back.
And what was interesting is when you had told me that you had, there was something in the solar plexus, it had dawned on me. I had been really physically ill for a couple of days, and it was the weirdest. I have chronic fatigue, so I am extremely in tune with my body, And I even said to my husband, I said, I am sick in this really weird way that I am not normally sick. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And it wasn't until I opened up psychically that I felt this woman was present. And then you told me about the solar plexus. That's when I put 2 and 2 together. And that was validation for you as well. As I went, oh my gosh, there was 2 days where it was just the weirdest kind of sick feeling that I had ever had in my life. It's just different. I can't even explain it. Can't even explain it. So you went in and you basically pulled those off for me. Right. Which is that expressive side. You're using your energy to positively affect my energy.
Yeah. And then, so also in your surroundings, I can throw out this, happy vibe and put up shields and stuff like that can kind of also add to the protection and prevent from further intrusion. But then the other thing is to let you know that it was happening,
right?
And that so that you could be aware of your own energy and keep your own space clear, because that's, again, the goal.
It is the goal. And I think that that's important to discuss. And that's why I reached out to you, because I went, oh, this is Sarah's domain. I got to get a hold of her, because, and I don't want to get too much into it, but it's because we will talk about it more in future shows, and it is important. It was upsetting to me to think that someone would do that, right? I mean, it would be upsetting if you went to the grocery store and someone stole your purse, right? And you go, gosh, why would someone do that? But unfortunately, people do bad things. And so this energy was coming from this living person, and I felt kind of bad. I'm like, how did I let that happen to me? And
Yeah, you didn't let it happen though. They did it to you.
It happened, right? Exactly. And so I turned to you and I said, I need a little bit more education on what can I do? And you did a great job of kind of teaching me and giving me some techniques and things. And it was really funny because Spirit had advised me to get with you about doing a psychic protection course, and they actually channeled a bunch of information, and we have the lesson and we have to get that put together. It's going to take some time to do that, but there's some great information from Spirit plus your experience that we need to talk about. So
right. I'm super excited for that too.
So. Yeah. So thank you for helping me with that. But I thought that was a really good example to give people of how you used a very healing. It was a healing modality, right? I mean,
right.
To positively affect my energy against someone who is negatively attached to me in these very strange ways.
Right.
But then also helping my shielding.
Right. I would say don't feel bad because
it's hard not to feel bad, right?
No,
we feel like it's our fault.
Yeah, it's not though. And the thing is that I've been attacked so many times, it's not even funny. And I don't know, like there are times when you can remove it yourself, and there are times that you have to ask for help. There's so many times I've had to ask somebody else to help.
That's a good point. I mean, let's face it, we can't all heal ourselves. Sometimes we need people,
and more so in the way where you are being attacked. It's like this is a legit intentional intrusion on your energy and space, and just saying that the intention on their part to deliberately get into your space, it makes it hard to just get rid of that if you don't know what's happening. And that's why being aware of your own energy is number one. And then number two is like sometimes it's hard to clear yourself when you have someone that like intent on doing damage or whatever it is that they're doing, and you need to ask someone for help. So I'm grateful that I too work with amazing astral travelers that can help me if that happens. So yeah, because we all need help sometimes.
Absolutely. And again, we're not going to get too much into today, but I do want to let people know that really is what your specialty is. And I am grateful that you're able to offer assistance. Ultimately, I'm responsible for my own energetic space. And so, I clearly went, okay, if I'd had more tools and I'd had a little more experience, I could have handled that a little bit better. But like you said, it's nice to have someone that can do it for you. So if people want that information, I would encourage them to reach out to you. Your contact information through your website and everything is down below in the show notes. But, and I know that you're trying to work to get some more of that information out as well. So if you could, in closing, one of the last things I wanted to ask you is for someone that's sensitive, but maybe is not aware of their energy or their space, right? Because remember, it's like I immediately recognized it.
Yeah,
but probably, well, that's because I had an experience with a negative spirit, and I knew exactly what that felt like. So this happened to be a living person. The last time was a spirit. So I'd had that experience. But that takes time to develop. So I guess my question is if you're not aware of your energy, and there's nothing wrong with that because not everyone is, but you're still sensitive, what are just some basic beginning steps that you would tell people they need to do to just kind of get themselves started in protecting their space?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Let's see, first and foremost,
I know you're going to say grounding, and I'm just going to go,
It's your own. It starts with yourself. I'm sorry. You have
well, no, I know that we're responsible. And that's why I'm like, what are those techniques though, that someone should be focusing on regularly?
Well, there's two aspects, I guess. So you have your personal self, and then you have your environment.
Okay.
And also the people that you attract. So those can all be factors in bringing in this kind of negativity. So keep yourself grounded. you know, look up guided meditations, do whatever you got to do to learn about how to keep your own energy flowing and clear and happy. You know, just, and it has to be high vibe, right? That's what the goal is. Even if you're depressed and you're having a hard time, just try to work on healing yourself, right? So yourself is number one. Number two is your environment. You know, just living in like a just really dirty, crappy, I mean, it's low vibrational kind of atmosphere that can also add to the negative layers that you're, and this is it, is like we're talking about layers upon layers upon layers. If you're setting, you know, setting the stage for a dark area, you're a dark person, you're going to have darkness in your space.
And we don't mean dark as in negative, because I just wanted to add to that. I apologize for interrupting you, because I don't want people to see dark as like the person is bad or negative, because maybe you're just having a lot of trauma.
That's how I perceive it, honestly, even if it's sadness, anger.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. It could just be heavy emotions, right? We're not necessarily talking about, you know, any negative in that, because what's negative, like you said, can be fear or trauma or tragedy or worry, those negative emotions,
right? And negative emotions can be a catalyst to attract spirits that will attach to you. They'll follow you home. I mean, you know, that sounds scary, but it's like, hey, it's true.
But I want to clarify that it's rare, right? I mean, I want to clarify that it's rare. It's common for you because it's your work.
Yeah, but you're probably right. I'm more exposed to it than most.
Go their whole life, and tons of people that never have those experiences.
True.
And I wanted to point that out too, because when you said you've been attacked a lot, and I want people.
Oh yes.
Because clarify, I think people are going to go, well, why is she being attacked all the time?
Yeah. No, let me clarify that. I've been attacked by the living. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the living are way worse than the dead any day of the week. Living people attack. I have not had very many issues with any kind of spiritual stuff. Like, I mean, I did at my old house. I had to do a lot of smudging, and that was the next thing that I was going to bring up is, you know, this intention, because that's what smudging is, and you can look at my blog about it, but it's basically it's intention, and you're raising the vibration of your environment. That's how you keep your space clear. If your space is high vibing and you're high vibing, then you're not going to be attracting these dark things into your life.
Well, and so people would argue and say, okay, but now, when you scanned my energy, you didn't see anything dark as far as I was concerned. You said you felt that my energy looked really bright and clear. Right. So I think it's important for people to realize these things can happen anyway, right? Because it's the intention of the other person. It was her intention.
That's why the living sucks. Yeah.
So,
no, and it's because, you know, the living have an agenda in that way. And when it comes in that form, you don't recognize it necessarily right away. And that's why they get away with it, is because you're not aware of your energy. That gets into other stuff. But back to the original question about how do you keep yourself clear?
Yes.
There's many ways. And, you know, I mean, stuff happens, and sometimes you'll still have to ask for help. Like, again, if you live in a vortex or some kind of ley line or something like that, you might be apt to have more activity. It doesn't mean that it's going to be negative. But it might just be something that you deal with. You know, not everybody wants everything removed either. They're like, oh yeah, we got this little guy that lives in the shed. He's fine. He doesn't bother me. And you're like, okay, you know, I don't have, it's fine with me. But again, it's like, what can you deal with? You know, on what level are you willing to accept this energy level? So, you know, if it's not high vibrational, you're going to be attracting low vibrational stuff. And there's no real other way to put that.
Okay.
So smudging, grounding, chakra clearing, these are the things that I recommend to the clients every time. I'm like, how do you know anything about smudging? Do you know anything about
Well, and it doesn't even have to be smudging. I think, because we've talked about this before, smudging is an option, right? But it's like, for me, I don't like the smell because it causes, I sneeze and everything
No,
else.
and there's
But I
so many
love
things
burning
you can use.
candles,
There's so
that's my
many
intention.
things. It's intention. There's so
Right.
many things you can use. If you don't like sage, use Palo Santo. You don't like Palo Santo, use dragon's blood. You don't like that, use
Because it's
something else.
not the burning so much as what you're saying is the fact that the ritual puts action behind the intention.
The ritual adds, yes, it adds this like potency to your intention. The more that you use, though, in that ritual,
You're kind of
the more you're
reinforcing your
adding
intention,
to
right?
it. So if you just like candles, that's enough. You don't have to do anything else. That's an intention. You just set and you said, hey, I'm going to light these candles. I'm asking spirit to remove spirit. You don't have to be astral. You don't have to call me. You don't have to do any of that. You just say, I'm lighting this. I'm setting the intention. This is my space. I'm claiming this space. It is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And you do it in a loving way. Okay. It doesn't have to be angry, but it is assertive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean, and so then the next thing is, okay, let's say you use sage. Now the Native Americans talk about using sage all the time and the medicinal benefits of it. That adds potency to your intention.
Sure.
Does it do something to your physical environment? Maybe. I'm not sure about all the science behind what's in sage, but they talk about having medicinal properties. Is that raising the vibrations of your space? Yes, it is. So is it adding to that intention? Yes, it is. So the next thing you can do, stones, right? We all know that stones carry certain vibrational qualities about them. They have certain healing abilities to them. And when you add that on top of sage candles and whatever else you wanted to use, you're adding even more. Okay. So just saying, intention is important, and that is the most important thing. But doing your homework and figuring out what works for you,
right? Because it is unique
best
to the person. Yeah, you bet. Right.
So I've had lots and lots of people say they don't like the smell of sage. I'm like, I'll have a return client, bless her heart. She's like, my husband hates it. I'm like, okay, I totally get it, right? Try something different. Use the Palo Santo, use the dragon's blood. All of these things have, these kinds of like cleansing and protective types of qualities about them. So that when you use it, it raises the vibration. It smells better. It's happier. It's lighter, you know.
You can use music even, it's like if you've got music is great,
absolutely.
It's whatever resonates with you. I know one of the things that I like to imagine is that there's a tent over my property. And then I imagine that the tent, but like the corners of my property, because it's almost like this rectangle, the tent goes over my property. And that at each of the corner, I imagine that the tent goes down all the way into the ground. So there's no way to get in. And then of course my tent is white and gold and it's basically impermeable. And every now and then I will just kind of go back and I will imagine the tent over the property. And it's like, you just pretend like you're maintaining your tent, right? It's just a visualization. It's a visualization. It's an intention. What's that?
I said, do you know what you're doing? You're shielding.
Yeah, you're shielding it. But yes, that's exactly right. It's a shield, but I just envision it as a tent because I think it's just a good way to think about it. And here's another suggestion that I haven't been as diligent about it as I should, but you talked about stones because some people like that. They like the vibrational quality. Does it add a component? I'm a little skeptical. I understand the theory of scientifically or spiritually why it works. But the other thing is you can imagine animals protecting your property, right? So let's say I've done that sometimes. It's like where I've got lions or wolves walking my property. And it's like, if anybody shows up that I want, they can take care of it. So it's a visualization.
To me though, that's not necessarily an imagination because you could have been inspired because those could be your protective type of animals. I have wolves. It was like I've talked with lions, it's like they're out there. Those are actual astral things. So
and that's the whole point of even animal magic, right? For people who we hear of shamans and indigenous tribes or old cultures. It's like bringing in the energy of an animal because it has characteristics. If you think of a lion or a tiger, a jaguar, a wolf, they're powerful, they're strong, they're protective. That's the energy you're bringing. So that's just another tactic that I like to use. I think the biggest secret though is doing it regularly, doing it often, maintaining it. That's the hard part, right? Is the maintenance. It's like meditating. You kind of, okay, do I have to do that? And it's like, well, yeah, kind of.
I know. And honestly, I tell people a lot, it's like, it's not like a one thing and done, especially if you live, like I said, in an area that is naturally more active. You might have to stage or do whatever ritual it is that you do.
Like you don't shower once and then you never shower again, right? It's just one of those things.
Exactly.
It's a maintenance. Yeah, it
has to be done regularly. So now, I mean, I have had people that are like, oh, I just did it once and it was fine. It got rid of whatever it needed to get rid of, and that's great. But for some things, that's not going to cut it. So
yeah. And I think it depends on the person too, because some people are just very closed off to experiences and they just don't affect them. And that's okay. Other people are very open and they're very sensitive to experiences. So it's based on you and what works for you and your personal space.
Right.
So was that kind of the highlights that you were thinking of as far as suggestions for people?
Yeah. Cause that's typically what we tell people, is grounding, meditation. Well, it depends too, because like I said, some people that we come across have their own psychic abilities,
right?
And so that becomes a different lesson.
Intention, right? Yeah, if you're aware of your energy, there can be some deeper techniques that people can do and stuff like that.
Right,
so it does depend on where you are and what your experiences are. Yeah,
yeah,
very true.
So yeah, I think that's it. Unless, you have another particular question.
No, it was just some basics, since we're talking about it, if people are like, well, gee, what do I do?
Also people underestimate the power of prayer. So one of the first questions that I ask them is about their religious preference. So I do believe that faith is required, and I don't care what you believe in, but you need to have faith in what you're doing and
True.
kind of what I'm doing. It's like, if you ask me to remove something, it's like, if you don't have faith that I got rid of it for you, it's that fear, I guess, is really kind of what.
Well, that's the intention behind it again. It's now you've added the wrong intention to it. Yeah.
And so when you have faith in things and you feel protected by some higher power, that does keep you protected, in my opinion.
No, in mine as well. Yeah, in mine as well. Although I will admit that when this living person did this to me, it wasn't, not that I didn't turn to spirit to fix it. I just knew that it was something that could be resolved between you and I, And so it was like, we do need to be proactive is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's like yes, we can pray, we can have faith, we can ask spirit to help us. But at the same time, their role is only so far, right? We have to be proactive as well, right? I can pray for God to heal me all day long, right? But if I'm still eating candy bars and potato chips and soda, I'm not doing my part.
Right.
So there has to be a balance there between us as well. So like I said, I know we'll talk more about this. It's a big topic. It's important. It's a huge part of what you do. I think the only thing that I wanted to add when I was talking about, I've been attacked a lot from the living and so on, I think I just wanted to express to people that I think you had to have those experiences because this was the work that you were meant to do. And so I don't want people to think, well, she's been attacked a lot, so there's something wrong with her, or she's unethical, because that just isn't the case. Or we all go through difficult times, right? We all go through bad experiences, and those experiences shape who we are. So I want people to understand that I think that you, from my perspective, you had these experiences because they taught you how to do this work. This was what you were meant to do. Do you not agree that that's why all of these experiences happened to you? Because they were learning.
I mean,
they were lessons for you, right?
Yeah. At the time, it didn't feel
It
like
doesn't
that.
feel that way when we're going through it, right? When any of
No,
us are going
no.
through our hardships, it doesn't feel like it. But that's where the meaning comes from later.
Yeah, no, at the time I just felt well, betrayed, attacked, yeah, all of that. So it wasn't a pleasant experience at all.
Mhm.
But having to go through it, yeah, I was forced to learn things that I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with, that I
Mhm.
didn't even really believe in. I didn't really, when I first started doing this, I thought psychic attacks meant like you would get attacked by a ghost or a spirit, like psychically,
Mhm. Mhm.
I really, what I come to know is that a psychic attack is a living person attacking you. It has nothing to do with the spiritual people. So, um, yeah, just a lot of stuff that I learned that I didn't think I was going to be delving into at all.
Mhm.
And I am very grateful, because I learned so much, and now I feel like I'm a lot stronger than I was in the past.
And it's what brought you to doing this work, right? I mean, because look at everything
Well,
that you've
no,
learned.
not being attacked. No, um, no,
But it
I
gave, okay, so didn't it give you the tools though to do this work?
um, as far as astral is concerned, no, that was like, I mean, I took the astral course. I started doing astral work in cases, and then I started getting attacked by other people, um, where I had to now shift again and learn not just astral and healing and all that stuff, but all the weird, you know, things that can happen to you from other people now, living people.
Mhm.
Even coming across living people in astral that you don't know, or like, soldiers that are astraling that you're oops upon, and oops,
So do you feel like your attacks increased because you were in astral? Because some people would say, well, gee, I don't want to work in astral if I'm going to become
no, it had nothing to
vulnerable to
do.
all of that.
No, nope,
Okay.
had nothing to do with astral, and everything to do with the circle that I was in.
So it was the people that you were associating with.
Yep.
Gotcha. So that's a
100%.
telltale sign to make sure that you're working with the right kind of folks, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
So
and so that raises an interesting point. And I think that that's very true. We need to be careful about the people that we work with. And I don't want you to talk about anybody specific. Obviously, that would be incredibly wrong. But what were some of the characteristics that you felt
similar
clued
to what
you
you
in that
said.
you were in the wrong circle?
Well, I think that I was in the wrong circle. Well, okay. Um, just listen to our last episode about psychic vanity. Okay. Those are
Okay.
all red flags. Okay. For one thing.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
Number two is, I don't know, just reading people, and when they say one thing and then the actions are something else. That's another thing. So, oh yeah, I'll come help you do this case, and then they don't, and then they end up messing it up. They don't tell you, and then you end up getting hurt for it. Or was that intentional, or was that not intentional? You don't know, but then you let it slide, and then something else happens. So it's kind of
So
just
kind of
like,
integrity and ethics.
yeah, it's just, kind of figure out who you're working with. Yes, always be mindful if you're going to do astral with other people, what their intentions are,
Mhm.
as to what's going on. It
And
depends on what's
that's
going on.
true not just for astral, but for psychic work or mediumship or healing. You know, when somebody's
Right.
healing you, if they're not in the right space, yeah.
But let's say let's say that happens and you go into astral and you're like, well, how do I know if I'm, being attacked by someone in astral that's living? Okay.
Mhm.
Not dead, right? Not the
Right. Mhm.
spiritual.
Mhm.
That's a lot harder, actually. It's a lot harder to decipher. So we tend to blame things on spiritual things, but um, like one of the things is that people, like what happened to you is when they tap in and you're trying to connect now with your client and you can't because you have a big block. in front of your face, and all you can think about is this particular person. Well, why do you think it is that that particular person was the one that you came up with? Because that is the person that caused this catalyst. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And a really sick feeling or draining feeling, because a lot of these people are they suck off your energy. You'll notice, you'll feel sick, you'll feel tired, you won't be motivated. Maybe you have brain fog. It could be a lot of things. But that's why being aware of what's your normal, what's your energy levels like anyways. And now, oh, well, look, I've been hanging out with this person a lot lately, and all of a sudden I feel like this. Well, is that good or bad? And then you need to decide, because it's hard to prove it. Let's say that. It's hard to prove, oh, this person was the one that did it. You don't know. So it's just being aware of your energy. If you start to feel, randomly sick, or you start to feel, like I said, just really drained, or you're having weird, I guess, just negative things happening. Like I had one time, it was just like a bunch of like really random negative events. And I was like, there was just this twinge in my brain that was like, there is something off about the way that it all happened. And, you can argue all day long about whether or not it was actually spiritual, but then it's like, okay, well, when I cleared it and I had someone help clear me, because that was another time that I had to have help. Okay. And then it makes this huge difference. And now all of a sudden I feel better and I don't have all this weird bad luck. Then that to me is validation.
But I want to go the other direction and make sure people understand, just because you're having a run of bad luck or bad things are happening to you doesn't also mean you want to necessarily jump to all of, okay, I'm having this psychic issue, someone's cursing me or attacking me. And it's like, because sometimes you're creating the negativity,
you're cursing yourself. It
exactly,
could be you're cursing yourself.
So so it's very convoluted, and it's confusing, and people are like, oh, well, gosh, no wonder I don't want to get involved with all this stuff. And I'm like, look, you're involved with it, whether you're aware of it or not. You can walk by somebody in the grocery store and get a sick feeling, and you don't know why, because psychic is always transferring between people, whether you're aware of it or not.
And that's true. So
it just happens.
But what happens is when it's intentional, and that's the difference.
And that is a difference when it's intentional, you bet. But there's so much to this topic, and it doesn't get discussed enough sometimes. And you run into many people in the metaphysical community or practitioners that don't run into these issues. And that's great. And I'm glad that they don't. Right. And ideally, if you're keeping yourself clean and you're doing the right work and you're in the right mindset, your vibration is high. I've only had 2 negative experiences out of the last 13 years. Right. So in all reality, and neither one of them were super bad. They were just a matter of me not knowing how to handle the situation. I gained the tools, got it taken care of, and moved on. And I was done. It was over.
Right. And so that's kind of how you work through it.
Yeah. But I don't want people to be scared, but I think there's an awareness factor that needs to be present, and to realize that it is a reality. And we are talking about it a lot because, again, it's where your work is. And so it seems common for you, but that's because that's what you do all the time. Right. If I was talking to a heart doctor, he'd be talking about people having bad hearts all day long, because that's all he talks. That's what he does for a living. So I don't want people to get scared or get concerned. But
I do think that it's important for people to understand that can happen. The living are way worse than the dead by far. And
I've had one of each. I've had negative with one of each. So it's neither one are fun. It's they each have their own set of problems, but
I can handle the other one. It's the living that I can't handle. So
yeah. Well, so I want to thank you for taking time to answer some of these questions today. I hope that they kind of help illuminate a variety of different topics. Again, my paranormal work is completely different as far as what I do from what you do. Nothing wrong with that. We just come at it from very different places. If I ran into someone that was in need of resolution or clearing, I would immediately call you, because that's not what I do. I'm more of I'll talk about me, but I more of an analysis, right? It's much more clinical for me in the sense that I want to alleviate any normal explanations. We're going to narrow down whether or not it's coming from the living person, whether or not it's coming from departed, and what are some of the solutions and the suggestions that we have. But if you're looking for removal, that's not my thing. I'll admit it, you know. So we have very different modalities. So I appreciate you kind of sharing some insights.
Thank you for asking.
Did I not cover anything about your work that you really wanted to talk about?
I don't think so, but I mean, if anybody has questions, you know, they can always comment questions or reach out and ask questions. I'm an open book. I'm more than willing to answer any of those. And yeah, I like to talk about it. So,
and your contact information is down below. I do want to ask you, and if I'm correct, now you do not charge your clients, you accept donations, but you do not charge. Is that correct?
Right. Everything we do is absolutely free. And part of that is because people are coming to us in distress.
Right.
You know, they don't have options and they've exhausted. Sometimes they've already spent money on paranormal groups and stuff like that. And I don't know. I just don't feel right about it.
Yep.
At least not yet. That's not what we do. So it's free. So if you know people that need help, or you know anyone that is experiencing activity, by all means, reach out. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. To either one of us. I mean, it's like I said, we take it from different places, but if it's not something that I feel that I'm qualified to do, and you're looking for the kind of stuff that Sarah needs, I will immediately, say, hey, okay, let me put you in touch with you, and you guys can see if it's something that works for you. So, all right. Well, for those of you who stuck with us through this whole episode,
yes, thank you.
We thank you for staying. And I know that we'll be taking some short clips out of this and making them smaller, because sometimes the show can get long. But yeah. So thank you for joining us for Project Perspectives. Please please subscribe, please join us on our Facebook pages, and catch us for our next episode. So thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.